there are patterns you can engage in before you have kids that you lose. You lose coping mechanisms, or you keep using those same coping mechanisms and your kids lose you. So how do we shed some of those insecure coping mechanisms that we relied on before and replace them with secure coping so that our children get to have us?
You talk about the idea of secure attachment so beautifully in all the work that you do. Can you walk us through the gifts of a secure parent and what we often need to work through in ourselves to be able to offer those gifts?
The first gift is feeling that we can handle what they feel. You know, a kid benefits from a secure relationship with us if they sense that they can be tender, they can be scared, they can feel overwhelmed, and that we will most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, be able to handle that.
Welcome back to the show. As always, I have an amazing guest lined up for you, and she is a repeat guest. And you know that when I have a repeat guest, it means I really love them. But also, I love following her content online. Her book, the first book I read of hers, Raising Securely Attached Kids, which if you're not watching the visual on YouTube, I'm holding up her book, is one of my favorite parenting books. And I say that because there's so many parenting books, but I just loved this book. I listened to the audio version and hearing her speak and it was just awesome. But now Eli Harwood is a licensed therapist and she has a new book, which we'll get into. So Eli is a licensed therapist, mother of three, creator of the popular social media channel Attachment Nerd, and I'll be linking that, author of many books on secure attachment, the most recent being her newly released book, How to Deal with Your, I'm going to call it baggage, all your stuff, so your kids don't have to, an encyclopedia for ditching your emotional baggage. Eli is on a mission to make the world a more secure place, one parent-child relationship at a time. Welcome back, my friend Eli, to the show.
It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me and for cheering me on.
I am so excited. I cheer you on because you cheer me on and you cheer values on. You know, I just want to say this to begin. Earlier this year, there have been so much in terms of unrest in our country. And, people have their different opinions, but I have a very value-driven parenting style. I believe that we should be raising securely attached children, children who love other children, children who understand that we have differences, and just because we have differences doesn't mean we have to be unkind, that everyone deserves dignity. And I just want to say thank you for all the advocacy and voice that you gave online during all the ICE protests. I know that can tend to be very controversial as a social media figure, but I watched a lot of the parenting space be very silent, and you were not one of those people. And it means a lot because sometimes it can feel as if in the parenting space, it's usually the women of color doing that. But you as a white woman showed up for the community. You showed up not to just look at color lines. You showed up because you knew that it was the right thing to do. So I just want to thank you that the reason why I love you even more now is that I can tell that not only are you writing these amazing books, but you're also practicing what you preach in creating a more secure place in this country and in this world. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. You're making me cry.
You make me cry. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, because there is no color of child. There are children and children who have different colors in different situations and different levels of status and privilege and all of that crap.
Yeah.
But man, my heart breaks for every kid everywhere, and I don't know.
Thank you.
What a mess we're in. Yes.
It's a mess. And I hope, this, so I don't know if my listeners know this, but I record episodes and sometimes I debut it later, obviously, than the episode is aired. So we're recording this in January and it's airing around the time of your book debuting, which is April. And here's the book again, How to Deal with all your stuff so your kids don't have to. But one of the things you talk about is bias, right? And so we can get into that a little bit later because I would love to talk about that. But I just want to get into this. I love chatting with you, not only as a friend, but as a professional. You already created this amazing book that is my favorite parenting book, which is Raising Securely Attached Kids. What made you want to now focus on the parent, in terms of here's what you need to do? What was the inspiration for this book?
Well, when I was writing Raising Securely Attached Kids, I mean, first of all, I've been practicing for almost 19 years. So this head and heart of mine are so full of so much information and heartbreak and mistakes that parents have made and all that stuff. So when I was writing Raising Securely Attached Kids, I wrote chapter 3, Our Kids Can Feel What We Don't Heal. And as I was writing it, it was like, oh no, this is an entire book. Like I have to figure out what to do with this chapter in this book, and then I have to figure out how to turn this into a book because it's the most important work we do for our kids. The
Yeah.
gift we give our kids is being grounded enough, connected enough, secure enough in ourselves that they trust us to be there for them, right? And
Mm.
so for all of us, that means different things. Some of us are navigating baggage that's related to childhood abuse. Some of us are navigating baggage that's related to just disconnection. Some of us are navigating racism. Some of us are
Yeah.
navigating, ancestors who held racist beliefs. Like we're all navigating different things. But at the end of the day, if we don't deal with those things, then our children inherit them.
Yeah.
And if we don't deal with those things, then our kids will not bring their authentic selves and needs to us. They just won't. So we have to deal with it. And it's messy and complicated. So I was like, okay, I'm going to write another much longer book with it kind of goes through what I know and what the research says and what I think might be helpful because not everybody gets a secure parent. So at least you can have like a paper parent on the shelf to refer to.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel it. And, I think you and I have both discussed this not only on our last episode that we did about raising securely attached kids, but also just, you have shared in that book, you share personal stories. I
Mhm,
always talk about those personal stories of my childhood,
mhm,
and also the mother I became because of life experiences and how it was so important for me to undo a lot of that stuff. And I think you and I both agree that this isn't even just about the kids, right? Like, I mean, I
No,
obviously wanna do this for my kids, but I just didn't like feeling that. Like, why did I
no.
wanna feel so anxious all the time? I told my therapist when I started working with her, the first intake session, she's like, "What do you want out of this?" And I said, "I want to stop living on edge. I want to stop feeling so
Mhm,
tense." And that started in 2023, and we actually recently had a conversation, and I said, we did it. I feel in peace in my body. Like, and I'm so grateful for you for helping me get there. And she's like, I'm so proud of you because it just feels
mhm.
good. So thank you because we need this. I
Yes.
don't think people realize it until sadly they become a parent that they're like, oh shoot, I gotta work
Mhm,
on this stuff. They just kind of slide by and then their kid brings
mhm.
it all out in them.
Well, yeah, I mean, before you have kids, you have access often to more time alone,
Yeah.
to numbing agents, there are patterns you can engage in before you have kids that you lose. You lose coping
Yeah.
mechanisms, or you keep using those same coping mechanisms and your kids lose you. So,
Mm,
that's kind of the goal is like, how do we shed some of those insecure coping mechanisms that we relied on before and replace them with secure coping so that our children get to have us?
yeah. Oh, and that kind of leads me to the first question that ties into both books, but of course, the power of the new one. You talk about the idea of secure attachment so beautifully in all the work that you do, especially in that first book that I've already read, that it's built through, experiences kids have with you, small moments,
Mhm,
so many
mhm,
things. It doesn't have to be grand, and we just forget
mm,
that. Can you walk us through the gifts of a secure parent and what we
mhm,
often need to work
mhm.
through in ourselves to be able to offer those gifts of being a
Yes.
secure parent? Yeah.
So the first gift is feeling that we can handle what they feel. A kid benefits from a secure relationship with us if they sense that they can be tender, they can be
Mhm.
scared, they can feel overwhelmed, and that we will, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, be able to handle that. And that means responding to it. That means being compassionate and understanding about it and grounded enough in ourselves that we don't lose our grounding because they are upset, right? So it's like we're
Yeah.
soft enough and sturdy enough that they sense like I can get my emotional needs met. I can get emotional support from my parents. So that's the first gift of the secure parent. I'm probably going to get these out of order because I have them in order in my book. But so if you're like looking at the book later, like
You're
that's
like,
not the order.
"No." Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah.
First of all, I'd be impressed. But okay, so
Yeah.
number two is the gift of feeling that we want them close.
Mhm.
This one, I wanna say it's the easiest gift to give. I think it depends on how you grew up. So it's maybe not always the easiest gift to give, but I think there's so much power in this gift. If we can express outwardly to our kids that we find delight in their presence and that we have gratitude that they are ours, that is a massive protection around their heart. That is a massive gift because they're going to go out into the world and not everyone's going to want them. Not
Yeah.
everyone's going to treat them right. I think about times my kids have been bullied or rejected, like that's just reality in the world. And so when our kids can sense from us that they are wanted, there's this protection there. It's like, I may not be wanted here, but I'm wanted somewhere. Whereas if our kids can't feel that we want them close, they're a lot more vulnerable to, sacrificing themselves for insecure relationships out in the world in order to find belonging with people who don't treat them well.
Yeah.
The third one is the gift of being able to be their full, authentic selves with us. And that's the experience of feeling that we're proud of them for who they actually are. And that means that we figure out how to expand ourselves so that our kids can be fully themselves instead of trying to fit our kids into who we think they should be. And,
Yeah.
there's a whole spectrum of things that can get in the way of that, like our beliefs about, what our kids should look like, our beliefs about how our kids' brains should work, our beliefs about their identities. This gets really tricky, especially as they get into adolescence, because in adolescence, our kids start to really differentiate themselves from us. And they're kind of picking, like, who am I and what do I believe and what I feel about? So that's where we have to expand ourselves as parents so that our kids can feel, my parent loves me for who I am, not for who they want me to be.
Yeah.
Okay, now I am going to open up my book and make sure that I'm getting the last two right.
I love it. Isn't it, you put so much work into this. I mean, because as you, like, I think my listeners now know that I'm writing a book, and like,
Uh-huh.
there's so much going into the book, and then it's
Yeah.
almost like you write it and it's like, what did I
You
just write?
you
Like,
can't
what?
remember all of that. No,
Yeah,
of
like
course not.
I'm writing these amazing things and stories and like, this is so good. And I know this information like the back of my hand. And then I'm like, how did I say it in the book? Because it's writing on a book. I don't think people realize this. And writing
Yes.
for a book is much different than writing for a blog or writing on social
Mhm.
media. Like,
Mhm.
my agent was like, Mona, you do so good on social media scripting, but this is different. Like,
Yeah, this
this
is
is so,
288
yeah,
pages or something
yeah.
crazy like
It's
that.
like, you
Yes,
need to explain. And I'm like, oh, okay. I love it. So
totally.
yeah, tell me.
Okay, so the other gift is feeling that we understand their perspectives. And this is
Mhm.
about our giving our kids the time, the airtime they need and the presence from us that helps them really feel heard by us. And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that we are bending our boundaries, that we are saying like, "Oh, you can just have this or have that because that's what you want me to do." It's saying, "Help me understand why this matters to you and what's going on there so that we can find a solution that doesn't involve risk to your health or well-being or to your social belonging or whatever the thing is."
Yeah.
But when our kids can tell we're really listening, what happens is they learn to listen deeper to themselves and to other people. And that is an incredible gift, not just for
Yeah.
them and us, but for the world, right? Being able
Yeah.
to really hear people. Um, and then the gift of feeling that we show up for them in the important moments. And there's kind of two sets of important moments that I think of, which is we show up for them when they're tender and when they're
Mhm.
struggling, and we show up for them when they're triumphant and they're celebrating. And so that means that we are at that important piano recital as often as we can be. We are showing up to hear them read the slam poetry that they wrote for their fourth grade competition and they want us to hear out loud. And we're celebrating with them about the things that they're gleeful about. Like, man, there's
Yeah.
such power in our kids feeling us join them in the good stuff. And, when they're in pain, it's our job to show up, whether that pain feels small or insignificant. And that can be tricky as a parent. I have a whole chapter in here about talking about when we feel jealous of our children, because
Mhm.
when you break cycles, you create the reality for your child that you wished you'd had for your own childhood.
Relatable. Mhm.
And so it is totally normal to be in front of your child and they're in pain and distress about something that wouldn't have fazed you because it was so far from the level of pain and trauma that you experienced that it seems innocuous? That's not the word. Innocuous to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, it's obviously easier said than done sometimes when we talk about these gifts, and that's part of why I wanted this book out there, is I wanted parents to go, "Okay, my kid is sad. I don't get it because I cannot relate to being sad about that. What do I do? How do I work
Yeah.
through that? How can I reconnect with my kids so that I can show up? So that when they're sad about something that seems small to me, I can understand that it's big for them. And part of why it's big for them is I've worked so hard to protect them from the bigger things that I had to go through.
Mm, I love these 5 things. It makes so much sense. It makes me feel warm, fuzzy, and also validating that it's what I'm doing with my children. So, holla! I love that. But you meant 2 things. One, you talked about the showing up, like for important things. And I wanna speak to my experience now having a very flexible schedule, and then also when I didn't have a flexible schedule,
Mhm,
because both are
mhm,
real realities. So, right
mhm,
now I have a flexible schedule where I'm able to show up to all the things that we may seem as minor, right? Like,
mhm,
meaning
mhm,
that, "Oh, do I even need to show up to that?" But we go, and sometimes it's not both of us, right? We
mhm,
pick and
mhm.
choose one
Yes.
parent or the other, and my
Mhm,
son will come home and say, "Oh, mommy, you weren't there," or "Daddy wasn't there," and we're like, "Hey, I'm
mhm.
so excited. Daddy took a video and sent it to me, and
Yes.
I am so
Yes.
excited." And then the moments that you're not able to be there,
Yes.
same thing. If you have a proxy that can go in your place, like, maybe whoever it is, if you're
Grandma,
working,
grandpa,
awesome.
auntie,
Yeah.
neighbor.
Maybe trying to find a way that we can make someone go that's not mom and dad
Mhm,
or
mhm,
or the primary caregivers, but
mhm,
and then looking at the video. And if it's
mhm.
not happening, because there have been instances where neither of us can make it, just being really honest and saying, "Hey, I heard you did amazing, and we're gonna
Mhm.
make every effort to be at the next one," and
Yes.
that open sort of that celebration of, like, and I do believe that we should be celebrating, like you, the moments that we think are not that big of a deal but that are a big deal to them,
Yes.
and I not
Yes.
you don't need to roll out a red carpet and have a like $100 birthday
Mm-mm.
celebration,
No.
but just like, hey, I'm you did so well, that you worked so hard, like, this is
It's
so great.
about being emotionally attuned to our
Yeah,
kids, that we're noticing what's lighting them up and we are joining them in that lighting up, and then we're
yeah,
noticing what's tearing them down, and we're present for that and empathetic for that. And I think I love the way your brain works so much because that doesn't mean so I'm a working mom too. I don't go to
yeah,
all of the things. I can't go to all of the things. So that's really an important differentiation here. It's not about doing everything and showing up
right,
for everything. It's about doing that enough. And that's going to be, as much as you can. So let's say let's go worst case scenario. You're a single parent, you have zero support. You are
yeah,
barely making it by and you don't think there's anyone trustworthy to go in your place and you can't go to those things. Make a tiny hilarious little drawing of yourself and in on the back of the drawing tape a little message during each of those triumphant things that are having and you give that to your kid and you say I can't be there today because I have to work, but I want you to open this before you do your performance because
oh,
this is what I would be saying and doing if I was there. And then on that little piece of paper, say, imagine me jumping up and down, my face lit up with the biggest smile you can imagine because I think you are wildly amazing. And I can't believe I'm so lucky to be your parent.
that
You know,
last phrase, that you said it already, like, how we just want them to know how we love them and just feel blessed that they are our child and that they're not a burden,
yes.
I hear it a lot, and again, not neither you or myself are falling into toxic positivity. We both are very well aware that
Mhm.
parenting is not hunky dory.
Mm-mm.
I have been there both medically, mentally, all of it. Like, I get it. I'm not
Mhm.
just saying it, but I also do believe that I want my child to know that they are so freaking loved and that they are like, to me, they're the bee's knees. Like, I think they're amazing. And I love that you also said that you hold the boundary, right? Because, as you know,
Mhm.
I'm writing a book about this, that it doesn't mean that you can't hold a boundary and still hold love. Like, there's boundaries, but there's also like there's no boundary on love that you can
Right.
give, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
There might be limits and boundaries to what we can physically do,
Yes.
but we can still express and offer. And one helpful thing I have in my mind is parenthood can be extremely burdening, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that our kids are the burden. The
Yeah.
burden is usually related to, the systems around us, the
Absolutely.
support that we don't have, right? Based on the world that we're living in. And I think if you are in a moment where you're feeling burdened by parenting, it's just really important that when you're with your kids, you zip your lip about it. They don't need
Yeah.
to know that. They can't get that. And kids will interpret that as I'm a burden. So when you're having that feeling, making sure that you're journaling that in a very private locked journal or you're sharing that with someone you trust and you're getting that out somewhere else. And that to me is dealing with your stuff so your kids don't have to, right? Like I get that it's overwhelming. And I, like everybody else, have days in my parenting journey where I'm like, what in the actual blah?
Yeah.
Like, this is too hard. It's too much. I
Oh,
want
yeah.
out. I don't want my
Yeah.
kids to go
Yes.
away. I just want them to be
Yes. I need
chiller
out. Yeah.
humans.
Yeah.
Yes, I need a
I
break.
It
Yes, that's
happens more than
real.
I think, like, I mean, totally, and I mean, it was really it I mean, we're recording this on a d like, it happened a few days ago where,
Mm,
like, you're tapped out, right? You're like, "I
mhm,
can't
mhm,
take all of this right now," and it's so important to just accept that and hopefully figure out what you're gonna do with that, and
mhm,
your example of, like, the parenting is a burden, I apologize. My husband works a lot of night shifts and works a lot of
mm,
odd hours, right? Because he's an
mhm,
ER physician, and I do a lot of solo parenting on the weekends, and there was
mhm.
one day, and it again, enlightened me of this. I need to really reflect on how I communicate. Where my son, I was frustrated and I was being very irritable and, like,
Mhm,
snappy, and
mhm.
he didn't get it, but he's like, "Mommy, it seems really hard to be a mommy." And he said that. And I
Oh.
and I said, it is hard to be a mommy, but I don't want my son to think
Mhm,
that, like, because of my children, that,
mhm,
like, he's visibly seeing this mom have a very irritable time. And I said, "You know what, Ryan? Yeah, I'm sorry. Being a mommy and daddy is very hard, but I always love you, and I enjoy
mhm,
this, and I got a little frustrated, and maybe I need to fix that a little bit." And
mhm,
I've gotten better, right? I don't do
mhm,
that anymore because I'm like, he was saying something so pure, not like,
mhm.
"Mommy, you're mean," or, "Mommy, you're a bad mommy." He was just like, "Wow, it's really hard being a mommy." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and it is hard, but I don't want him to feel like you said that because I have to care for him and his sister, that I
Mhm,
feel I hate my life. Like,
mhm,
that moment that mommy just feels so hard. And so
mhm,
now I think part of what your book is about and why I'm so excited to reading it is, like, really trying to catch yourself and understand that you're human for feeling these
mhm.
ways, but
Yes,
you're also human to change and want to say, well, I don't want my kid to have that experience and think that mommy hated me, like,
yes,
and that
yes,
didn't want to spend time with me. And obviously that doesn't happen, but it was a wake up call, like that moment
yes.
that I have to watch what I say. And it
Mhm.
doesn't take away the feeling of feeling exhausted and wanting to sleep, but, like, they don't deserve that. Like, absolutely not.
Totally. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I write in the book that the chapter that I am most struggling with in my own parenting journey that I
Mm,
wrote about is how to deal with our stress and
mm,
feeling stressed. And so I think, like, that is what that moment was he was cueing you into the fact that your grown-up stress was spilling out over into his world. He could
yeah.
feel it and sense it at a level that he was feeling responsible in some way of, like, I need to figure out how to help mommy with this parenting thing. It's not a parenting failure for our stuff to spill out around our kids. That is a human part of the parenting process. The goal is that when it spills out, that we notice the impact that it has on them, and we do exactly what you did. We go, "Ah, there's my stuff.
Mm.
There
Yeah.
she is. I see you." And that we then go my kids, when I'm in my stress mess, will say, "Mom, you're being so harsh," or, "Mom, you're being so mean."
Yeah.
Those are the 2
Yeah.
kind of your kid's response was really, really, intellectually
It was very
evolved.
he's very intellectually evolved. Everyone always says it. He says phrases and I'm like, "Where'd you learn that from?" Like, he
I
says
love
very
it.
insightful things for a 6-year-old. It's very fascinating to me.
I
Yeah.
love it. But, yeah, I mean, so when our kids are saying, like, "You don't love me," they might be saying that because we said, "I'm so sorry, we're gonna take a nap," or, "We're going to go to bed," or, "You have to go to school." So that might just be like an outcropping of their dysregulation around a limit or a boundary, but it can also be a cue that they're needing us to work on something that's getting in between them feeling like we're really there for them in that thing.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference between those moments where we're like, "Get in the car. Get in the car." And we all do that. I mean, I
Yeah.
can act that out because that is very comfortable in my mouth, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is a thing, but that is a different experience for a kid than, like, "Hey, kid, I know this is so hard, but we are gonna go to school. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
pick you up, I'm gonna put you in the car, and we're gonna get through this together."
Mm.
Same set of actions is like we're putting them in the car, we're holding that limit, but very different experience emotionally, and the difference usually is our awareness of our stuff,
Mhm.
and
Oof.
I think that if we can make that a priority of, like, I'm going to really make it a priority that in my relationship with my kids, I acknowledge that I have stuff and I work on it. That goes a long, long way for security with our kids.
And now, segueing into this book that I'm just so excited is out in the world. The book centers around the idea that kids shouldn't have to carry the emotional baggage we never dealt with, right? And so when it comes to insecurities like self-doubt, anxiety,
Mm.
bias, body contempt, I don't have all the list in front of me of what you're going into in the book. How do these show up in parenting in ways parents may not even recognize? Like, are there ways that
Mm.
you're like they're like, "Oh, shoot." Like, me and you we're talking about ways that
Mhm.
I actually recognize, but are there other things parents should kinda look out for?
Yeah. So, there's things that are more obvious, and then there are things that I would say are more covert. So, if you grew up in a situation that was messy and hard, and you coped with that situation by going, "It's fine. It's not that bad. I've got this." You probably have a relationship with denial. And
Mhm.
denial plays out with our kids in a really kind of subversive way where our kids are going through something or experiencing something, and we're coping with that by reframing it as not as bad as it feels to them.
Yeah.
And our kids won't always confront that with us because they'll accept that denial as sort of the litmus test for what they should be feeling. So a lot of the things that, self doubt, if we're being hard on ourselves, that doesn't make our kids more confident in us. That doesn't make our kids trust us more. And so let's say we mess up, our stress spills out, our stuff spills out, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." I call this over apologizing.
Yeah,
"I'm so sorry,
yeah.
I'm so sorry." And we're asking our kids to make us feel better by saying sorry. In our head, we're like, "Well, I'm apologizing. I'm being a good parent because I'm saying I said something wrong." But the experience for our kids is like, it's my job to regulate my parent and help them feel
Yeah.
worthy again. Um,
What a burden to put on them. That's
I know.
But
Yes, it's
no, I mean,
huge.
we do a lot of it has happened, and many of us listening probably have had that experience growing up, for sure.
Mhm. I mean, so, okay, our bias is a chapter that I think a lot of people might be like, "What? Okay, how does that?" But
Yeah.
this is something I've seen so much in my career as a therapist, is that we often have ideas about groups of people in the world, and those ideas, we all have ideas. Let me say that differently. We all have ideas about different groups in the world, and we all have biases towards groups of people and
Mhm.
against groups of people. That's just how the human brain works.
Yeah.
And if we are like, "Well, I don't that is not about me and my family." What happens is our kids fall in love with someone in a group that we have a bias against, or they become really close friends, or they get involved in social activism that involves groups of people, and that will distance them from us. I have seen so many people give their kids secure-ish or secure enough experiences in those younger years and those early adolescent years only to be deeply at odds with their kids through adolescence and adulthood because they weren't able to go, "Wait a minute, part of my job as a parent is to look at my blind spots.
Yeah.
Who are people that I look down at? Who are people I'm afraid of? And where have I learned those messages? Have I learned those from real life experiences and therefore it's traumatic material I need to work through?" There's a chapter on dealing with feeling traumatized. Or have I been given stories about groups of people that I don't know that well? And accepted those stories without meaning to, without understanding them, and it's like we live in an increasingly global world. Our kids are gonna be more and
Yeah.
more aware of the diversity of humanity, and so if we aren't willing to work through our biases, eventually our kids are gonna lose respect for us and not feel comfortable coming over for the holidays. I mean, how many people raise your hand, obviously, I won't be able to see you raising your hand, but how many people really struggle to wanna go to family gatherings right now because of the biases that your family members have never examined.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
Hand raised, both of us on the
Yes.
visual if you're watching. No, and oh man, like it is so deep and it hurts. Like it's very hurtful, especially like, there's a quote that goes around that like when your children are going to eventually figure you out, right? Like you can hide them when you're paying their bills and buying their food and doing all that. Fine, they'll probably support you, and that's
Mhm.
you're the one who's taking care of them. But once they leave your home, once they
Yeah.
finally explore the world, those experiences, like you mentioned, the people they meet, whether they go whatever college or whatever career they
Mhm.
do, they're going to
Mhm.
start to realize, especially as their prefrontal cortex has developed, that they're like, huh, I don't like the way that happened, or my
Mhm.
mom or dad was kind of this way. And that's a good thing that we start to question
Mhm.
things and want to be
Mhm.
better people. There is a
Mhm.
large reality that many people don't do that, and they just stay stuck in
Yes.
the cycle of bias and racism
Mhm.
and all of that
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
But do you think that the barrier for that, it comes down to first what we talked about, being humble, being understanding, having the insight into knowing that that's an issue and wanting to change that? And so, like, how can we help those families that just feel like they can't see it, that they don't want to do that and don't want to break these things and don't even know they need to?
I mean, I think my first invitation is always compassion. It's like,
Yeah.
if you were raised to believe that racism is someone else's problem, sexism is someone else's problem, that happens out there, not in here, and I'm pointing at myself.
Yeah.
You were raised in a denial legacy, and that denial legacy probably plays out in your life far beyond those things. It's a tool of coping you were handed, and so that tool of coping said, the best way to deal with these really messy, uncomfortable, sad realities in the world is to just say, "That's not mine," or "That's not real," or
Yeah.
"That doesn't happen." And what I don't want for that group of people is for it to erupt in an estrangement in relationship to your kids.
Hmm.
Or more significant, I'm gonna get real deep and hard for a minute, which is something I see a lot, which is kids whose parents have biases against LGBTQ community who have those identities and who won't ever share with their parents, who have a much higher risk of completing a suicide.
Hmm.
I don't want that for you. Like,
Yeah.
if your world says, "Ugh, I don't really wanna touch that stuff," I hear you. I hope you don't have to, but man, the gift to you and your kids is going to be going on the heroic journey to examine the false narratives you've been told about
Yeah.
groups of people you don't have proximity with.
Hmm.
And all the friends you've been missing out on. Like, oh
And
my gosh, there's so
yes.
many friends that you haven't gotten to know that can teach you so many
Yeah.
things about the world that you wouldn't know because you don't live in their body.
And the food. Like, I have a friend who, like, lived in middle of nowhere, Ohio, and he just had some white friends and some black
Mhm,
friends. Okay, that's it.
mhm.
And he didn't even know what the term South Asian was, which to me,
Wow.
I'm like, "What?" And he re we and I'm like, "I'm South Asian." And that I used the term. He's like, "What do you mean South Asian?" And I'm like, That's the term we use for people from India,
Mhm,
Pakistan, Sri Lanka,
mhm,
like South
mhm,
Asia."
mhm,
And he didn't know that. And I also tell him about food and what to
mhm,
order at, like,
mhm,
restaurants. And
mhm,
because I grew up in a very Asian diverse community, right? Korean,
mhm.
Filipino, Chinese, everyone, Indian. And so
Yep.
that was my identity in my life. And so I think about, had we never met and had we never
Mhm.
had this friendship, like, how, again, he would be closed off. And he also admitted, like, the racism and biases he's had,
Yeah.
and just the way he is. And I'm like, thank you so much for changing that, because obviously then we wouldn't have probably
Mm.
met or wouldn't have had the friendship that we do, you know?
Oh, love that.
And how lovely. I mean, I think you, like you said, you open yourself up to being a well-rounded human by letting go of those biases. And going back to what you had mentioned, I think it's important to remember that biases, opinions,
Mhm.
feelings can exist. Like, I don't
Yes.
think you can have an assumption, you can have a feeling, but it's how you act on it, it's how you voice it, it's how you teach your children about it. It's about, like, that. Like, I mean, it's okay. Everyone has feelings, like you said, it's a human nature thing. But what are you
Yes.
doing to make it that it's not an unsafe world for that person, that it's not a
Yes.
unfair world for that person just because of
Mm.
your own biases, you know?
Mhm. Well, and that's where I think examining your biases is the gift. The gift to
Yeah.
yourself and to your kids and everyone else is to be curious about them. Who taught me this? What experience do I have? Have I ever watched, a film written by someone of this group? Not just a film portraying this group by someone
Right.
else, but have I read books? Have I engaged with the art and the culture and the food of this group? How do I relate to the humanity? Because I guess I believe this with my whole heart, and maybe we can have a debate later on offline. Just kidding. I don't wanna do that. But I I they're humans are human, and so there is
Mhm.
humanity in every group of people, and there is also depravity in every group of people, and this kind of notion that, you know, some group is better than other, it's just a false narrative. The question
Yeah.
is, How much do you know about this group and their story and their lived experience? And, once you start getting in proximity with people, what you find out is, oh my gosh, there is so much more here in common than there is not. And there is a lot
Right.
that's not in common. There are circumstances, there are
Yeah.
rights, there are traditions, there are beliefs that are not in common. But at the core of it, like, people are just trying to take care of themselves and their kids and their communities.
I know. Oh, I think I might. Well, I'm going to read from the beginning, but that chapter is probably going to be the chapter that I want to jump to about the bias and stuff. I feel like I've done such a good job, but of course, one of the things I want to remind is that I think when you read a book like this, you'll kind of start to say, "Hey, am I doing good? Like, can I be better?" And I'm on
Mhm.
a lifelong journey to be better, like
Mhm.
better, humble. I am a lifelong learner, not only in my medical field and parenting, but also just wanting to better self. And so I think this is the kind of book that'll do that. And, in the book, you also talk about emotional maturity rather than emotional suppression. And so, what does
Mhm.
mature emotional handling actually look like when parents are dealing with things like anger, fear, shame, or feeling
Mhm.
rejected?
Mhm. It looks like I can feel my feelings, so I
Hmm.
can tolerate what I feel, I can acknowledge what I feel without going into more primal blow up or shutdown. And so what we wanna model for our kids is it's okay to feel angry.
Yeah.
That isn't dangerous. That isn't actually a risk. The risk is when we don't reflect on our anger, when we don't direct our anger in healthy and appropriate ways, when we don't communicate the needs underneath our anger. And so a lot of it is learning how to tolerate what we feel so that we can communicate what we feel and we can be a needs meter, that we can meet our needs and we can notice our needs. That's kind of my like dorky little needs meter,
Yeah.
right? How's the needs meter going? Oh, okay. I have high needs now. What are the needs? How do I respond to that? I mean, that's ultimately our emotions are they're signs pointing us to our needs or to
Mhm.
the needs of others, because we can feel emotions not just on behalf of ourselves, but on behalf of other people. So when we start to feel something, it's our job to learn how to understand, oh, that's that cue, and this is what it's related to, and here's what I need and what I can do. So we want to show our kids that they can feel. Mark Brackett has a lot of work around this. I don't know if you know Dr. Mark Brackett,
Yeah, yeah.
but he's the director of the Yale Studies for Emotional Intelligence, something along that lines. But he wrote a book called Permission to Feel, and kind of the whole notion beyond in that research is when we have permission to feel and we can feel without reacting to what we feel, then we can respond to what we feel. And that's
Mm.
sort of the goal of emotional maturity is learning how to respond to our feelings as opposed to react to our feelings.
And that is just that exact problem that I think we deal with, there's it's so easy to be reactive versus responsive. And
Mhm.
I'm very transparent that I had to do a lot of work on changing that. And
Mhm.
I've gotten so much better. And to remind our listeners, like you it takes work to get to that point, and a lot of it is reading the right books,
Mhm.
seeing therapists, working on that. But when you
Mhm.
start to do it more, it's like
Mhm.
a gratitude jar. Like you start just seeing that it's possible, and then it just
Yes.
cycles. Like it's like this
Yes.
positive
Yes.
snowball of like, yeah, I can respond instead of react, and then it feels good. Like I
Yes.
can't stress how much this isn't just about the parenting. Like it is
Yeah.
obviously very important, but it's about I don't want to feel irritable and angry. Like I just don't like how it
Yes.
makes my body feel, and also to be quite frank from a medical standpoint, that doesn't do well for your sleep or for your well-being. So let's
Right.
make this all about the whole body experience of being a parent. Yeah.
I love it. Well, and, part of why I wrote this book too is, like, I encounter so many people who are like, "I know I don't wanna do what my parents did, but I don't know how to give my kids something else because I'm still healing from what happened in my
Yeah.
childhood." And it is hard to find community around that stuff. It is hard to find people who have the effort and the time to help you work through what you're feeling, understand what you're feeling, develop emotionally mature habits. Not everybody can afford therapy. Um,
Yeah.
I also, just for anyone who is in that space, I have a lifetime class course membership situation called the Secure Parent Program. And I have made it a pay what you can program
Love it.
because honestly, I really don't care what you can pay me. I really want everyone to be able to have access to as much information as they can. And I have coaches who do support groups and I have live Q&As with me every month. So if you're someone who's like, I literally have no one, I don't know how to do this, get my book. that is going to be a big piece of just helping you get clarity on how do you become the secure parent your kids need. And then, come sign up for the Secure Parent Program and get yourself in some community.
Amazing. I'm going to be linking that and make sure we have all of that, including your handle and the book and all of that. One other thing I want to ask, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. But, one of the things we talk about is rejection. Rejection can feel
Mm,
really activating. And I see it a lot in my husband. He gets so
mm,
almost offended, disrespected, like, it just makes him feel so upset, like the feeling of
mhm.
rejection or like, "Oh, I don't want daddy," or whatever it may be. Can you explain maybe where that can come from? And maybe there's many reasons. And I think you talk about the difference between big R and little r rejection and
Mhm.
why that distinction may matter.
Okay, so this is one of the longest chapters in the book because
Mm,
it has some incredible nuance. And I want, as you're listening to this, you may need to dig deeper. But
yeah.
so, rejection, the feeling of I feel rejected by my kid, is something every parent experiences. So, if you've experienced that, it doesn't mean something's terribly wrong. It might mean your kid is learning how to exert autonomy. They're learning how to have a separate, agency in the world.
Yeah.
It might be that your kid has a secure relationship with you, but that you aren't their primary preferred caregiver. And
Yeah.
that is not about, I love mommy more. That is about, from an evolutionary perspective, our kids are going to form a primary bond with one person so that if the tiger enters the room, they don't have to think, well, is it mommy's day for a hug or
Yeah.
daddy's day for a hug? Which one do I
Yeah.
go to? They just flee into the arms of the person that their brain has prioritized as number one attachment figure. And again, that's not about loving that person more. That's not about trusting them the more. That's usually about, sometimes that's just the fact that that was the birthing parent. Sometimes it is about the personality alignment, because, and that wouldn't always be the birthing parent. Sometimes that is about the time spent.
Yeah.
There's lots of variables. But so, what I would say to your husband is like, that is so hard when you wanna be the safe place for your kids to, like, get support when they're scared, sad, upset, and they always want your wife, they always want Mona. That's so hard, that's so painful. But if you can tolerate that feeling and not interpret it as rejection, what will happen as your kids age is that they won't have to have that preference in the same way, because as kids get
Yeah.
older, they're more capable of fighting off the saber-tooth tiger themselves. So then
Yeah.
they won't have that same exact preference scaffolding. So, what I would say to him is like if the kid is crying and he goes towards them and they're like, "Mommy, mommy," instead of being like, "Why can't I help you? I love you.
Mm.
I can do this." Don't do that. Just go, "You really want mommy?" And they might, just by you saying that, melt into your arms.
Yeah, because
Because
you're seeing them, right.
yes, and
Yeah.
and so you pick them up and you go, "You really want mommy." And sometimes they just need mommy first, and then let them have mommy, let them regulate, and then say, "Oh, that was so hard. Can I give you a hug now too?" Keep that trust and don't make it about you, which again, easier said than done. Like that is
Yeah.
really hard to do. But so rejection from our kids is going to trigger rejection ourselves. If you have ADHD, you might have higher rejection sensitivity.
My husband has ADHD, which makes
So
sense.
that makes it
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah.
If you're highly sensitive, that's also true, or if you have trauma around abandonment and rejection, like
Yeah.
that can rub up against all of those things. And so your job is to be like, okay, my kid is not, unless your child is an adult saying, I want no contact with you, you haven't been rejected by your child.
Right,
Your
right.
child is relating to you based on, something you're doing or not doing, or based on nothing related to you at all. And so how you handle that moment is going to develop trust for them. If you cannot take it personally, if you can look underneath the, you know, I hate you, mom, or I don't want you, or whatever the knee-jerk response is, and you can be reflective about that and help your child understand that, it will only make them feel closer to you.
Yeah, I mean, it happens to me, but I'll be honest, like I spend more time with the kids as it is, just
Yeah.
because of our schedules. Even
Mhm.
though I work way more hours, it's just because I work from home.
Mhm.
And then my daughter, like she'll have her moods, right? She's a toddler,
Mhm.
so sometimes
Mhm.
she'll be
Mhm.
like all on me, will not
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
literally like koala cub climbing on my face, like okay. And then sometimes she'll be like, then our nanny will be there, and our nanny will be in the same room, and she'll go, "No, mommy, I want Maggie." And no,
Mm.
mommy, no, no, mommy, kissy. And I'm like,
Mhm.
initially that feeling came, and I'm like, oh, but listen, I like birthed you. What the heck? And then I was like, okay. And I'm like, hey, mommy loves you. Whenever you're ready, you can give mommy a hug. And then lo and behold, Maggie leaves for the day and she's like on top of me and won't leave me
Mhm.
alone. And I'm like, hey,
Yes.
at least I got like a few hours of not
Yes.
having something strapped to me at all times. And that's amazing. And so I look at it
Yes.
the perspective, because at the end of the day, it also comes down to knowing that I am creating secure a relationship with my kids, right? I know that
Mhm.
one moment of them not wanting me doesn't mean that they never want me. Same thing like my husband.
Mm-mm.
And that's that zooming out of understanding that those one moments don't define, right? Look at the big
Right.
picture of how are you approaching your kid? Do they feel safe to come to you? Which I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure most of our listeners will say, yeah, my kid really looks out for me.
Mm. Mhm.
Like searches for me, wants to be
Mhm.
with me. But
Mhm.
at those moments, I kind of look at it as like, awesome. I'll be back.
Oh,
Peace
yeah.
out. Like,
Oh,
enjoy,
yeah.
Maggie.
Well,
Yeah,
and
she's the best. Yeah.
awesome, my child is feeling that there are multiple people in the world that they can have closeness with and rely
Yes.
on, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely one of the hopes of secure attachment, isn't just that they feel secure with us, it's that that translates into them feeling secure within themselves, and therefore trusting the type of people around them that they, want to be reliant on or closer to, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
I recorded a podcast with a therapist. His name's Jeffrey Meltzer. He's Therapy to the Point on social media, and we were talking about protective things we can do for
Mm.
reducing the risk of anxiety and depression, like that needs, obviously severe management, things like that. And one of the things he talked about is teaching kids how to play well.
Mhm.
And part of that includes what you just mentioned about understanding that there's different relationships besides the relationship with you, and like
Mm.
having that, like basically from a young age, fostering the importance of community, because how important
Mm.
community is for, obviously mental
Yes.
health, right? And so the
Yes.
concept is there, right? Like that it's mommy's there, and mommy and daddy in our, that's who we are, for our kids.
Mhm.
But like, I really love that my child has such a very healthy relationship with our nanny, because it is healthy
Yes.
for her to know that mommy and daddy aren't always going to be there. We may not always be at the show.
Mhm.
We may
Mhm.
not always be there, but how cool it is to have we have this community, this,
Yes.
and that's what humans need. And that's why it
Well,
can
I
feel
would
so
say
hard, yeah, if we don't have it.
totally. I would say we're not just wired for attachment, we're wired for attachment in the context of community. Human
Yeah.
beings evolved in groups of people. And so when we're, thinking about and considering our relationship to our children, we also want to be thinking, who do I have in my life that's helping to buffer my nervous system? Who else can be a support in their life? How can we cultivate the experience of we belong not just to each other, but to the community that we've cultivated? Because
Yeah.
that helps us all feel more secure and less insane. And, I don't know how we got into this whole single family unit thing. I mean, some historians could walk us through that, but I
Yeah.
think that's been a real bummer for
Yeah.
attachment, actually, because
And
being at home by yourself with your kids is just enough to make you go Looney Tunes. We're not
And
wired
also,
for that.
right, and also I think that's why Americans struggle with a lot more mental health issues, to be
Mhm.
quite honest, like, especially
Mhm.
mothers and fathers,
Yes.
because of the Western, because 'cause I'm
Yes.
Indian, so there's a lot of
Yes.
community in Indian culture, right? The raising of
Yes.
kids is very communal, and here we are very isolated, and that is so hard to be isolated in the parenting world, and I felt it
Yes.
when I had no community. I was depressed.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not
Mm.
even gonna sugar I was depressed, I was on medication, I had therapy, like, I was depressed when I did not have community because I felt so alone, even though I knew what to do, like with the kids,
Doesn't
right?
matter.
Like
Yep.
parenting expert, blah, blah. It doesn't matter that I still need help. Like I still need
Yes.
someone to say, I'm tired. Like I just want to talk to you
Mhm.
about things.
Yeah.
Well,
Or to
talking
look
about
at you
community,
and say, "You're doing a great job," which you are, my dear. You're doing an amazing job.
well, talking about community, this book is part of our community now. So how to deal
Aw.
with all your stuff so your kids don't have to. What would be your final uplifting message for everyone listening? And maybe to the person who's like, where do I even begin? Besides getting your book, where do I do?
Well, I think my final uplifting message is, like, the instinct to be connected to your kids is wired inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be underneath some things you need to deal with, but it is there.
Yeah.
And you are deserving of that feeling of closeness and connectedness that you're going to give to your kids. So don't just work on being what your kids need. Also look around you and find some of those safe landing spots for yourself, whether that's a support group or a therapist or, I don't know, a bingo night. Like,
Yeah.
find a place, in your social world where
Yeah.
you feel at rest and at peace, so that as you are giving that to your kids, you can sense that there are places in the world that can give that to you also.
I love it. Oh, Eli, always a pleasure. Like, second time talking to you. Obviously, we talk between our podcast episodes. And you have a podcast, I know, and I'll be coming on. Tell us more where everyone can go to find you, your book, your podcast, any resources. I know you mentioned the community, obviously, as you can pay, but tell us all about that, and I'll be attaching all of those links.
Okay, just to make everyone's life simple, if you go to attachmentnerd.com, there's a link for my podcast. It's called the How to Deal podcast. There's a link for the Secure Parenting Program. All of my books are on there. I know you'll link to this book separately, but I think just go to attachmentnerd.com and then you can click to all my socials and all my everything. And yeah, whatever it is that you need as a parent, I'm working really hard so that you can feel seen and met in all these spaces, because this is how we change the world together. We take
We
care of each
do.
other. That's what we
We
do.
d we do, and I love to have you in my community. Thank you so much for all you do, like I mentioned,
Thank you.
not only for the education, but again, that belief that we can change the world in a loving, positive way
Yes.
without being harsh and angry and bitter and racist and all the things. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved
Yeah.
being here with you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. And for everyone tuning in today, you know the drill. I hope you know the drill. You got to subscribe to the show. You got to download this episode, because that's how we know that people are listening to the show. So it's really important you do that. Make sure you share it. If you loved it, go on our social media and just comment and share that piece so that people know that we had this amazing conversation. And thanks again to Eli. And I cannot wait to have another amazing conversation on the show the next time on the PedsDocTalk podcast.